Okay, so hi Katrina, this is Amber. We have never met. I'm really excited that you joined the COAC. It's really lovely to meet you. I heard really wonderful things about you.
Mhm. Thank you.
So I am the other I work for the owners rep team for ODOT, and so I'm Andre's counterpart on this project. So I'm really excited. So, did you get the matrix? Do you have a copy of it? Yes, perfect. Yes. Okay. So we had quite a few other community members that were going to be in this in the in the breakout group. In our breakout group, but it looks like in terms of the community, it's just you. So we have quite a bit of time where we can talk about these. So, again, the idea behind this is that we would spend a few minutes going through the matrix and then prioritizing what you think are the top three priorities. And then the other thing is, depending on what the top three priorities are, we definitely want to get more understanding from you about what it is that you want to achieve. And I know that you weren't at the previous COAC meetings where we developed this, but I can give you context for the questions. Does that help? Okay. All right. So Grace, who is on this meeting, she is going to essentially because there's only one of you, she is going to basically highlight what are your top three priorities. Um, so just when you look at it, especially because of your experience as a workforce provider, um, I'm really fascinated to know what were your initial thoughts, just in terms of the input. So quite a few of these came from Joe McFerrin, and so Felicia, she had identified number 5 on this list. This was number 5 was hers. So in other words, what you heard from members of the COAC was, one, the DBE and the workforce goals need to be disaggregated. They need to be disaggregated from the start. Second thing is, if you see the 40% minority males, they were like, it needs to be 40% as opposed to something lower. And then the other thing is, if you notice in number 5, they're interested in as a project, how can this project be used to help change and address the barriers within the workforce industry as a whole. And so then some of the other recommendations had to do with actual strategies or techniques. For example, number 10 was like, workforce doesn't have to be pitted against DBEs, and also we need people like you on the committee, and that's why you're here. So where do you want to start?
I feel like I'm on exactly the same page with everything that you have just said. Having one of the things from that I encounter when subs get to our programs, they don't have clear expectations, and by the time you're to that point, you're not making a lot of headway. You're trying to meet a goal instead of trying to have change. And so having as much as we can do up front to make sure that people are educated, that's going to help. If 40% is the where you guys need to are recommending folks are at, that, and then having the committee be able to look at the data from the very beginning and be able to pivot, I guess, based upon how things are happening, and then holding folks accountable for what they've promised and what they're trying to to do. So for example, being able to partner, even though I represent apprenticeship programs, being able to partner with the pre-apprenticeship groups to be able to make sure that we're using all of our resources to the best of our ability. That's a big, huge piece.
So can I want to tease that out a little bit more. So when you say partnering, tell me a little bit more about the strategy that you're thinking of.
So not only does every Joint Apprenticeship and Training Committee have goals and timetables and workforce activities that we have to do. And so that would include partnering with pre-apprenticeship, but I mean truly partnering with them, going to their graduations, having them tour the building, working out MOU agreements for how that's going to be handled, working to make sure that there are some programs that don't allow what's called Exception 5, and that gives somebody that's pre-apprenticeship to get direct entry into an apprenticeship program, meaning they're bypassing everybody else that's on the list. And so
so the piercing
go ahead.
Say that again. So in other words, you're saying some JTCs don't allow you to pierce the list.
To be able to take pre-apprenticeship to the top. Yes, some of them don't.
Okay.
Some of them only give extra points for pre-apprenticeship rather than letting them go directly to the bottom of the out of work list.
Okay. So I actually think what you just said is extremely valuable for Nicotris to hear and understand what you just said. So okay. Nicotris, she is the head of the social equity department for all of ODOT. And so Nicotris, can you hear me? I just want to make sure you can hear me. Okay, great.
Yes, I can.
Katrina, can you tell her a little bit more about what you just said? Give her context.
So in apprenticeship, you've got a rank list, which is like your pool of eligible folks that you've screened that are waiting to become an apprentice and go to work. And sometimes the way that we do intake for that, we try to give points so that the best possible applicant with the best possible chance of being successful to complete the program goes to the top and goes to work first. And there's an opportunity for folks that are lower down to do specific tasks to get higher. So that list is pretty structured. That's how a lot of people for apprenticeships are using a ranked list. This gives an opportunity for folks that, for us to recognize the great work that pre-apprenticeship is doing and that they are essentially assuring those soft skills and some of the certifications are there. And so giving that same person that's come out of pre-apprenticeship the same recognition to be able to go to the top of that, because they're going to be more likely to get into the program and be successful. So they've done probably at least 150 hours in a recognized pre-apprenticeship program. So Exception 5 basically means that the pre-apprenticeship has been recognized by OSATC, which is the Oregon State Apprenticeship and Training Committee, as a recognized rigorous program. And so if the JATCs, the Joint Apprenticeship and Training Committees, recognize that, there is an exception that allows us to take that pre-apprentice directly to the top and get them to work quicker, like right away. They would go to the bottom, like ours, they go to the bottom of the out of work list. Each JATC gets to decide how that works in their standards, but for us, that's how we do it. Meaning they're going right past everybody and they're getting to go to work first. And so if we're partnering with pre-apprenticeship programs like Oregon Tradeswomen, for example, that's how JATCs are going to significantly be able to increase the number of females that are going into apprenticeships. And Constructing Hope, for example, they have predominantly, they have a higher African-American participation. And so that's another program that we would partner with. That's a really important partnership. Even PCC's pre-trades program, all of those are important for us to be able to realize and recognize the fact that the pre-apprenticeship programs have done the hard work for us.
Mm-hmm. And so essentially by doing what you just said, you can, given the goals, the high minority male goals, you can then pierce the list for the minority males that may be on lower on the list to then move up so that they can get work. That's the idea, Nicotrus.
That is the idea. In our case, we don't pierce the list. The using exception 5s moves them to that
Okay.
bottom of that list, so they're already moving straight to the top. But for
Okay.
folks that don't have exception 5, even folks understanding, and obviously the bigger programs are going to understand how to pierce the list, but educating the smaller programs how to pierce the list to get them out to work, yes, that's important.
Okay, so one of the things, so Katrina, you said, the other thing that you said was also you're interested in the barriers addressing, in other words, the actual industry discriminatory issues. What, so talk a little bit more about that. That's number 5. So
Yeah, and unfortunately this is being recorded, but I'm very honest. So there are a lot of folks that thinking of a politically correct way to say this. So there are a lot of folks that, like for example, a subcontractor that is signing on to do a job that doesn't understand fully what they're getting themselves into, what their obligation is, what their responsibility is. And so so we had a company in one of our programs that signed on, didn't understand the responsibility of and their requirement, and it was enough to destroy their company. That doesn't feel good. So educating them, you don't want somebody meeting the requirement just because they're meeting the requirement. This is supposed to affect change and be a positive rather than a punitive. And so breaking down, identifying what those barriers are and getting that information out, and educating the contractors is vital to being able to be successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So your point around the education is, so for example, it's both before and after.
It is.
Okay.
There's lots of people that know where all those gray areas are to get around things and push things to the limit. And that's not what this should be, what any workforce program should be about. It should be about helping them to be able to be successful.
Okay. All right. So if you had to say the top, seems how I getcha. If you had to say the top 3 barriers, what would you say they are?
I think contractors in general not understanding what the requirements are and how to meet those requirements. Like, what are their options available to help them? And that, so I think that's a big one. I think that workplace culture is another one. And also, I don't know what the solution for this is, but I often hear that I'm running a small crew, or I don't want to take on somebody because I can't work them full time. And so looking at that apprentice or that employee, like what's in their best interest. It isn't that someone needs 2 hours of workforce a month and that they're using that apprentice and then sending them back to the out of work list. That's not in their best interest. So I feel like, what's the bigger picture of how do you make that piece of it work where you can keep that on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So,
yeah, I look a lot of it as the contractor as one piece of it, but if we go all the way forward to completion and look at that particular employee and then look at the scope backwards, like how can we make that journey and that shepherding of that person, and what are those barriers that are there that contractor has that person's, you know, future in their hands.
Mhm.
Identifying what those barriers are and educating that employer on how to help that individual is one of the things I see as important.
Mhm. Yeah, your 2-hour example is actually really good. That's so technically, oh, I can't wait to pick your brain more on that, because technically, just in terms of the technical nature of that, how do you hand them off? And that's, yeah,
Yeah,
huh. That's a hard one.
that is a hard one.
Hmm.
We're pretty fortunate at Northwest College of Construction because I've got a large staff and I use them kind of as a mind hive of like, this is the situation, how do we figure this out? But not everyone, you know, has the luxury of being able to do that. And we can, you know, try something. If it doesn't work, pivot and try something else. We spend a lot of time, you know, working on relationships, but not everybody has something, a mechanism like that to be able to spend that time. I'm getting ready to meet the allied coordinators, which would be all the open shop administrators and coordinators in the state, so
Mm-hmm.
that we can develop a network to share resources about situations like this. Like, how are you able to handle that? And so we can just like share the knowledge. The union side does a really good job. They meet, and so we just want to. I want to put something together for the open shop so that we can kind of look at some of this. And maybe, especially for the smaller programs, can we band together somehow and be resources for each other?
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Sorry, I'm writing this down. Um, um, look, can you look at number 6?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that one?
So like a project contact would be somebody, are you talking about like within ODOT that would reach out to figure out what, like somebody can't meet a requirement, and so instead of just issuing a good faith letter, that somebody reaches out and figures out why?
Yeah.
So I think that is important. So when I first got to Northwest College of Construction, we used to write what's called a good faith letter, just saying, hey, we don't have anybody, check back in 2 weeks. And it was the contractor's responsibility because it's their contract. I was new to the construction side of dispatch at that point, and I didn't realize the importance of what that letter signified. And so we don't do it that way any longer. We write kind of a timeline letter saying, you gave us this request on this date, we responded on this date. We sent you this person, you didn't take them for this reason. We sent you this person, you did hire them. And I feel like somebody, it's a great idea, but the project contact needs to be someone that understands the dispatch process and isn't accepting there just isn't anybody available. So like, what things did you try to make sure that you got somebody? So like in the, I sit on the CIEC committee, and we work closely with the compliance officers. And so that compliance officer basically is digging for that information.
Mm.
That they're able to before. So on the apprenticeship side, you don't necessarily know when the jobs start, when their hours have to be. But that person that's monitoring that does know that. And so in my world, usually the general is monitoring that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they'll call us, or the compliance officer is monitoring that. But a lot of times a sub can get themselves into trouble before they know that they've gotten themselves into trouble. And like, for example, they don't understand what work what apprentice means. Oh, well, I've got green people that I'm training internally. That's my apprentice, but they don't know that it has to be a registered apprentice.
Right.
On project contact that understands apprenticeship would be successful as long as they understood that and kind of, in my opinion, kind of dug in, asked those hard questions of why.
Mhm. Yeah, it's almost like we need to have some kind of, there needs to be like some of this basic information knowledge transferred to them as an onboarding.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, on the CIEC committee, the contractors report out on what's going on in their project on a regular basis. And then somebody from the committee is assigned as a liaison for that particular project. And that way, if something's going on and they need help, they're not having to wait an entire month to be able to get to the committee to get answers. And so I guess I would take that a little bit, that project contact could kind of be that function. And we've got, there's some that are doing a phenomenal job and blowing it out of the park. And we're able to use some of the great things that they're doing to a couple of the contractors that are kind of really struggling and saying, oh, well, maybe you could try this, maybe you could try that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we only have about 12 minutes. Can we just spend like 5 minutes and so you're our only COAC member in this breakout group. So can we just spend a few minutes and have you identify if you had to, it's just you, so prioritize all 3 of the top 3 things that you think are critical.
I think probably number 5 would be my number 1.
Yeah, I figured.
I also think that the number 9 for that pre-apprenticeship piece.
Yep.
And number 3 is probably going to be I'm torn between 10, 6, and 8. I like the idea of having clear expectations from the beginning from ODOT, and so that yeah, I'm torn. I think I'm going to say 6 as my, and can I switch 6 and make that the second and make 9 the 3?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like having somebody watching and helping and mentoring is probably going to be pre-apprenticeship is important, but I feel like having that person then could say, have you checked pre-apprenticeship? And they probably could help with the help with making sure that the expectations are understood. So I think that's probably a good order.
Okay, cool.
I think having the disaggregated data from the start is going to happen no matter what. So I won't waste my order on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Are there any others that you wanted to, do you want to talk about?
You know, talking about
that aren't here or that aren't here. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I think mentoring. So like I would completely expand 6 to include stuff like there are a lot of new companies that don't understand what workforce means, why it's important, why am I being, you know, forced into it. But there's the they've bid a contract and now all of a sudden they've got it, but they don't necessarily know what to do. And so I feel like having that contact person and then maybe someone that can also mentor them whether that's that same person or not. I'm not 100% for sure, but just being able to go to somebody on City of Portland jobs when a contractor is unsure, and I shouldn't be giving, you know, that sort of, not necessarily legal advice, but that sort of, hey, this is what the law, you know, this is what it says. I send them to Susan Woolley, for example, because she's in education. It's a safe place to ask a question. And so that's what I mean by the mentor piece, a safe place for a contractor to be able to ask that question that's not going to ODOT to say, can I do this or can I not do this? Because they might not ask, you know, if there's a safe spot that someone's not, you know, it's not that, aha, I got you doing something you shouldn't have been doing, rather than, oh, geez, you shouldn't be doing that. This is how you should be doing it. Let's fix it.
Yeah, that's really good. So are they a part of the city or not part of the city?
I don't know if it's necessarily part of the city or it would be. I mean, I think that's an internal thing. The reason that it works with Susan is that it's not that I got you, you know, it's truly, oh, you just told me you shouldn't, something you shouldn't have been doing. Let's figure out how to fix that. And they've got, you know, tons of worksheets and things that they can do to, like, tools to give people to help for tracking and those sorts of things. So the tracking side of it, that could totally be a city person. I guess it would depend on, I don't know all of ODOT's internal rules about what if somebody came to you and said, I'm doing this, but it's not working for me. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, geez, you shouldn't have been doing that. And it's a compliance issue. I mean, what ODOT's internal, you know, it should be a mentoring educational position.
Yeah, that's a really, okay. One other point, Grace, can you make this bigger, pretty please? Just so, because I have old eyes, Katrina. So just so you can see that number 6, that word, I couldn't see it, is specify an approach for obtaining an agreement to accompany the project contract. I thought it said contact.
Oh.
But it's okay. I mean, I know what your priority is, but just so you know, I thought it said contact and I was wrong.
Yeah, I thought it said that too. I don't have great eyes and I don't have my contacts in today. Thank you.
But that's okay. You should
thank you.
If you can report out what you're, in the way that you would say it, 1, 2, and 3, then that will that's perfect.
So is this something that when we go back into the larger room that you give a recap of what we talked about?
Yep, and we would love it if you could recap in your own words what you think are the priorities and why you think they're the priorities.
Okay.
And pretty much everything that you've said thus far is basically what folks said at the last meeting. The thing that was extremely helpful was some of the strategies, and that's the reason why you're on the COAC, is so that you can, as issues come up, you can help identify solutions and strategies for when problems arise, because, you know, there's always problems for which there's solutions. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so hang on a minute. I'm gonna do 1, 3, and 6. When they talked about, now that I can see that 6 says contract, not a project liaison type person. What was an example that they gave around when that was brought up? when they're talking about, you know, getting the JTCs and the unions and everybody to work together? What was the premise around?
Well, the premise around the context around that comment had to do with the pipeline.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, it had to do with the pipeline. In other words, this is the strategy question related to the problem, which is the pipeline.
Got it.
In which case,
Line number 2 then, because it still means this, it still goes along with.
Exactly. Number 2 is really your thingy. Yeah, exactly. That's so true. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. So, Katrina, so in your packet, there was a question and answer document, of which one of the, I don't remember what the question was now, but anyways, in the Q&A, we provided a link to the actual, the RFP, as well as the sample contract and the addenda. And in the specifications that we worked on, there is a mentor protege program. I don't know if you noticed that.
No, I didn't.
Yes, so there is a mentor protege program, as well as a technical assistance program that will be part of this project.
Got it. That's fantastic.
So given what you said, that's a, I don't know why I haven't heard the workforce side of the technical assistance issues that are needed. So what you're describing is perfect. I may call you, because if that's okay, because
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are many others that I want to pick your brain.
Yeah, I think just from working with the contractors, especially the new ones, they're just not, it's not for, well, I'm sure some of it's probably from a lack of they don't care, but it's not from a lack that they don't care or they don't want to, they just don't know how to. So instead of approaching it like, let's just meet these requirements, if you're taking a step back and, you know, how can you actually affect the change? You know, I always try to talk to them about that. And that's, I don't know necessarily that it's my place to educate them, but they have to be able to go somewhere to have that sort of support in general. So I'm excited that they're going to have this opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, well, this is wonderful.
Yeah. So since I'm the only one in this one, does that mean there aren't very many public members?
When you say, oh, no, it's just for whatever reason, a couple of the COAC members got sick, and a couple couldn't come tonight. So, you know, I mean, I think it was a scheduling issue. Usually it's a packed house. So
Okay.
For whatever reason tonight, we had a few folks that just couldn't make it. So,
Got it. No, I get that. We had a pre-meeting and I had an emergency like happen 10 minutes before the pre-meeting. And so I totally get it.
yeah. So they're gonna join us back into the regular room here in a minute.
Okay.
So
I will end the recording. Oh, on the recording now.